right, let's take this straight across to the debate that we're doing right here on the India Development Debate. A very, very power-packed panel that's joining us. Hormaz Sarabji, editor, Auto Car India; Jagdish Khattar, CMD Car Nation; Auto; Sunita Narayan, director, CSC and environmentalist; Prem Shankar Jha, journalist and author, has written extensively on the automobile sector; Harish Salve, senior lawyer and somebody who's been working very hard for the environment lobby; and of course Vinod Dasari, managing director, Ashok Leyland, and the outgoing president of SIAM. Thanks each one of you for being with us. And I'm really going to begin with the moot question. We all heard what Mr. Gadkari had to really say. He will bulldoze the auto industry, and just to quote him, band baja bajane ka time aa gaya hai, wo main karunga auto industry ke saath. Mr. Salve, we agree fossil fuels are bad. We agree there needs to be less pollution. We agree that our roads need to be less congested. But the moot question is, do threats work? And is this a language that a minister should be using at all? Mr. Salve. Hormaz Sarabji, if I may ask you the same question, what does one make of this language? Is this language justified at all?
To be honest, I'm really quite shocked with the tone and tenor of Mr. Gadkari's comments. Clearly, this will reverberate globally, because I don't think this is something to attract investment, especially in the auto sector. Of course, everyone wants, clean air. Everyone wants cars to be, we want less congestion. But I think, just to kind of take out a whip and just to make the industry the whipping boy, I think without really understanding the facts or technical details of this, I think is a bit crazy. And I think what I think is really important over here, what government needs to do is they need to set down stable policy. They need to set down norms. Of course, we all want clean air. So in view of that, if you want zero emissions, you make electric vehicles fiscally the most attractive, and you penalize the polluting one. But just set the norms, let the technology find its way. And I think that's really what should be done, instead of just, just having an outrage on the industry.
I actually have very many questions, and I'm going to come across to people and ask those questions. But Vinod Dasari, let me get a quick take. How damning is it for the industry to hear the man say, "Band bajaunga main aapka"? Vinod Dasari. Okay, I'll bring this to Jagdish Khattar. And Jagdish Khattar, you've been a part of the auto industry for long. And before I go across and ask this question of Sunita Narayan, I'm going to ask you, this government is pro-markets. This government is led by the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, who want more money to come in, who want investments to break ground. And then you hear this sort of a statement from Nitin Gadkari. What do you make of this? Is this his view? Is this the government's view? Is there a disconnect between the two arms of the government? I mean, what is really happening?
I think Hormuz has made the opening statement. I fully support him. The problem with automobile industry today is, as you mentioned, the two hands not knowing each other. We don't have one ministry to look after this sector. You have heavy industries, which looks after the automobile sector. You have Transport Ministry, which looks after the Motor Vehicle Act and everything that derives from the Motor Vehicle Act. You have Petroleum Ministry, which decides upon the fuel efficiency. And of course, you have the Supreme Court and others who take their own view. So answering your question, and as Hormuz has said, the industry has been saying, please give us a roadmap. You don't have to tell them and bulldoze them. Give them a roadmap and they'll follow. And they have always followed. So I think that is more important than this. And I think it's not a good impression that we are creating. Having said that, I think the important thing is, you're talking about electric cars which will come later. What about today's problems? Today's environment? And if it is 2030 we are talking about, UK is saying that we will get into electric cars in 2040. France is saying that we will do it in 2050. India is saying that we will do it 2030. While in the last 25 years, we have not been able to get CNG across the country. I mean, he has mentioned CNG as an alternate fuel. But what have we done in the last 25 years? Not available. in the entire country, in fact, very small part of the country. So how will they organize the whole thing? I think we need to go deeper into it instead of just, the government must do its job first before asking the industry to do it.
I'll come to the jobs part and all of that a little later, but I just want to get opening comments on the language that has been used. Prem Shankar Jha, you've been writing extensively on auto, you've been writing on other sectors as well. We've seldom had a minister come and tell an industry, and this is spoken at the industry platform. It's not as if it was spoken at an environmental summit. It was spoken in SIAM. It was spoken at an at an industry platform at a time when the industry is just coming out of the slow lane. At a time when the festive season is right around the corner. What do you make of these statements? Is this Mr. Gadkari's personal view, or is this a view shared by his government? Because contrary to what Mr. Gadkari is saying, the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have been batting very hard for foreign investment, for this whole Make in India initiative, for India to become this auto car hub. I mean, I'm just trying to understand from you, where is this wording coming from? Bulldoze and band bajana?
Look, first I must say, please don't go fixate on 2 or 3 words and then keep pushing them at the minister and then telling the whole world, therefore, that look what a bad place India is. He was carried away. Yes, we agree. It was not, shall we say, a politically wise statement. But I'm absolutely certain that Mr. Gadkari has no intention of doing anything that will keep foreign investment away. And this will be made very clear on one-to-one basis to anybody who's interested. I think we should get down to substantive issues. The question is, let us talk about electric cars by 2030. Have you even thought of what is involved? It's not only India that has got thinking of electric cars. The whole world is thinking of them. And what you need for that today is lithium for batteries. Right. Now, lithium is one of the rarer of rare earths in the world. Today, you're already killing each other over oil. It's the whole world with its 2 or 3 billion cars were to switch over to lithium. Tell me something, lithium batteries. Can you imagine the kind of conflicts that would happen? Secondly, we talk of this being cheap. The moment that demand for lithium picks up, its price will go absolutely sky high. The same thing is true in other areas too. It's happened in ethanol. The moment demand for ethanol began picking up, we suddenly realized you couldn't produce enough ethanol in the world to meet your requirements. Right. I'm going to come to the alternative fuels, and I get your point there, but I want to get Sunita Narayan into this debate. And Sunita Narayan, while I know that some of what you say is absolutely right, we hate pollution, we hate our roads being jam-packed, we hate that snarl of traffic, we hate the fact that we're not breathing clean air. But I think the government needs to nudge the industry. To say that you will be bulldozed is threatening them. To say that no matter what, I will clamp down on you and I will shut you down is threatening them. To say band bajaunga is threatening them. Do you support this at all, even though you may be on the other side of this debate?
No, where I have, yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad you've given me at least after the after some time you've allowed me to speak on it. Let me make it very clear. I think the minister is expressing his frustration at the fact that the automobile industry are dinosaurs. They don't think about the future. For the last 20 years, everybody has been saying diesel is highly toxic. Please do not invest in it. It is a carcinogen. It will not, it is very difficult to do pollution control in diesel vehicles. And yet you have automobile manufacturers investing in diesel because they know that there is a market distortion. Diesel prices are kept low today, even tax. Because of tax differential, the price is lower than petrol, and therefore dieselization is happening. 3 years ago, there was 50% new cars were diesel cars. You were minting money out of it. And yet everybody knew there was very high pollution, health impacts because of diesel. Automobile industry refused to listen. This year, when it came to BS4, and I think the minister alluded to it in his speech, don't come to me and say you have large stocks of vehicles that you have still not sold. The fact is, automobile industry knew that diesel was coming in, and yet they did, BS4 was coming in, and yet there were huge stocks which they built up. So let's be very clear. The minister has very rightly given a very bold, strong signal to the industry, which till now has had its head in the sand and has refused to see the writing on the wall. So please don't take this as an affront, as, you know, use bad language. I mean, right now, this country is in any case becoming so intemperate, and the way we are beginning to look at these things is different. So please take the minister in the right spirit, and please let industry move ahead for once.
Okay, I get that. Sunita Narayan says, do not pay so much attention to the language he's using. It's just frustration. The industry has not done its bit. Why is the industry going on producing in an inventory of diesel when you know this is not a good fuel to have? This is a fuel that will be clamped down upon. Hormaz, I'm going to let you come in on this debate. You know, the environmentalists and people in the government believe that the industry has not done its bit. Don't come crying to us. You knew the writing on the wall. Why did you not read it?
Well, I think firstly, and you know, I don't want to get into this very deeply because we've had this debates before with Sunita. I don't think diesel is the murderous fuel it's made out to me. Absolutely not. Today, a Euro 6 diesel is pretty clean. It handles the two issues, which is particulates and NOx, with a DPF and SCR, and they come down to really acceptable levels. There are benefits of diesel, especially you have to meet fuel efficient norms. And I'll tell you, there's something that just is not right. Last year, or I think it was in 2015, we drove from Delhi to Bombay on one tank of diesel and got 42 kilometers per liter. The next weekend, I went up in an AMG Mercedes to Mahabaleshwar and I got 4 kilometers of liter in petrol. I mean, are you trying to tell me that petrol is better than diesel in all instances? Definitely not. And I think this thing about being a carcinogen, Sunita, we know what tests WHO did. It was in a mine. We know that, we know how it was done. Okay, it is a carcinogen, but that doesn't mean that it can't be controlled. It's like saying that gas cylinders cause explosions and kill people. Should we ban them? Obviously, there are safeguards which can be taken. I think a modern diesel is very clean. It's been victimized. And I think really in terms of CO2, all the global warming issues we've had, diesel is really our best bet in the interim. But having said that, I think the big issue really here is, one sec, Supriya, the big issue really here is that again we are targeting technologies, we are targeting fuels. What I say again is, let there be a norm. Let's really promote zero emission. Now it could be that zero emission, you don't need electric. There are instances or there are technologies like hydrogen in an internal combustion engine which just have water coming out of the tailpipe. Of course, that's not moving forward, but you know, if you keep promoting a technology, there will be vested interests who will be working towards that.
Okay, I get your point, and the last line is telling that the vested interests will work to a technology that the government begins to put its weight behind. But I think Sunita Narayan has a point there to counter, and I'll let her speak. Yes, Sunita Narayan, please go ahead.
I just, two quick points to Hormuz. We've had this debate for a long time, so just 2 points. One, Hormuz, please stop defending diesel. There is enough data today that even a BS6 or a Euro 6 vehicle, when it was tested on road in Europe, the on-road emissions are much higher than what they were as it was certified. The fact is the balance between PM and NOx is not working out. So let's accept it. The second thing, as far as the minister's speech is concerned, Supriya, I just want to make the point. The minister actually made a very strong point, and that's where I feel industry is just missing the point. The minister talked about congestion. The minister talked about pollution from individual cars. And he talked about how industry should invest in transportation systems of the future. He talked about mobility transition. It doesn't mean that you don't produce vehicles. It doesn't mean you don't have Make in India. It doesn't mean that the world crashes down upon you and you become an outcast in the world. It means, as he said very correctly, that please invest in moving people and not moving vehicles. I mean, why can't that be understood by the automobile industry, which is so fixated on individual cars? So listen to the minister and for once listen to wise words.
Right. Okay, I get the point. I know you drawing a different inference from the minister's speech, and so is everybody else. I'm not getting into the diesel versus the other car debate. I really want to focus on what the minister has said and what message is it conveying. Harish Salve, I'm going to ask you a question. You are joining us all the way from London. You have a fair idea on the impulse you have an idea of the pulse of the Indian investor. We've got some really marquee names in Indian auto, whether it's a Volkswagen or a Honda or a Suzuki or a Merc or an Audi. All kinds of companies invested here, who sell here, who make here. What is the message that they're getting today when a speech like this is made by a very, very senior, by a very influential cabinet minister? Because this is not the government nudging you. This is the government, and I buy Sunita's point that, he's frustrated, but the government is threatening you. I mean, I'm sure these guys will go back and report to their global headquarters that this kind of a speech was made. Will they not?
Those are words of the Indian media. I don't think I've read anything like that here, or I've heard anything like that here. You people are trying to use words like this because your hearts are bleeding for the Indian auto industry. The same Suzuki sells Euro 6 in Europe. The same car manufacturers, the Volkswagens, the Fords, they all sell Euro 6 all over the world. Mercedes honestly came out and said, our cars are already Euro 6 compliant, and yet in India they were wailing about Euro 4 and Euro 6. So, it's all about domestic inventory and stuff like that. And this is nothing about the real problems being faced by anyone.
Vinod Dasari, I'm going to take a quick question on investments with you, and then I will move forward with Mr. Khattar and Prem Shankar Jha. What do you make of speech like this? What does it do to investment plans? What does this do at one level to the fact that, at one hand, the government is lamenting no investments, not fresh investments breaking ground, and quite on the other, one of the arm of the government says, I will clamp down. Now, there are big investments sunk in auto. What message do you derive from this?
On one hand, the auto industry is called the pride of the nation. We generate 30 million jobs. If the auto industry was to stop, or all the cars and vehicles in the country were to stop, the nation would come to a stop. So, auto industry is very important. It is very important not only for the economic and social development of our country, but it's also very important for the national defense. So, keeping that in priority, I find it amusing that everybody, when they get a chance, they beat on the auto industry. But on the other hand, everybody says it's the pride of the nation. You heard both sides of this government speaking on yesterday. So we are not, by the way, seeking any SOPs or incentives from the government. We are not worried about global competition. Let them come. Automakers in India are competitive enough that they will face any global competition. All we seek is a clear roadmap, not a clear vision alone. The clear vision was provided yesterday. Convert that into a roadmap. By when do you want electric vehicles? By when do you want CNG vehicles? By when do you want methanol vehicles or ethanol vehicles, whichever one that he said? Like we have a clear roadmap for Euro 4 to Euro 6. Nobody in the world has gone from Euro 4 to Euro 6 in less than 10 years. Because it was in the national interest, we decided to do it in 3 years. The government asked us to do it, and we are doing it. That's the level of investment that we will do.
Okay, I'm going to broad base this discussion, and we're not just going to talk about auto. I'm going to talk about this government's big initiative, Make in India. And Mr. Khattar, let me bring this to you. The government has emphasized a lot on Make in India, making India a manufacturing hub. I mean, to be honest, auto manufactures a lot here. It employs almost 30 million people, contributes to nearly 8% of the GDP, 3% from the auto components. What happens to programs like Make in India when narratives like this take center stage? Mr. Khattar.
Auto industry in manufacturing is 45 to 48%. Such a major weight it is. Our exports of component is 10 to 11 billion dollars. We have started exporting cars, and we are exporting about 800,000 cars a year. So coming back to your point, with great difficulty we have got these manufacturers here. They have invested a lot of money. Many of them are not able to do very well in the domestic market. So they have started exporting vehicles from here. I mean, what better bonanza can we have than they making a base here, using their international network and doing this? And they will make more investment because the exports will. So coming back, auto industry is a major player in manufacturing sector, and I think we should not do anything which affects them. Yes, the auto industry says we want a roadmap, that's all. They have no preferences. Let the government make all arrangements and give a roadmap and follow and not tinker with it, because they want predictability, they want consistency, and they want clarity. So, you know, saying that auto industry has got head in the mud and head in this, nothing at all. I mean, they are following the roadmap, bring another roadmap and then they'll follow it. You know, coming back to diesel for a minute, you know, we have 50,000 megawatts of diesel generators in this country out of 300,000 megawatts that we have. No one talks about converting them into anything else. And they are adding more pollution than the cars on the road. Lastly, I think Mr. Gadkari should concentrate on public transport. If he makes public transport adequate, acceptable, people will go away from the cars. In Delhi, your number of buses have reduced from 5,000 to 3,500. Why blame the car wallahs? Yeah, they are using it because the alternatives are not there. I mean, we are just messing up everything. That's a great pity.
Fair point. I get the point about public transport. I'm going to take that a little later in the show. But Prem Shankar Jha, if I may quickly ask you, tomorrow the GST Council meeting will give yet another blow to the auto industry. The cess on luxury cars is going to go up. This whole Make in India initiative that the government talks about really will be resting on very few legs. And auto, I believe, will be a very big leg of that Make in India. What are we conveying here?
I think that you're worrying too much about this. The reason why people invest in the automobile industry in India is because the cost of manufacture in India is 40%, only 40% of the cost of manufacture in Europe or the US. And that will not change in a hurry. Secondly, the attack on the automobile industry for producing diesel vehicles is completely misplaced. The attack should be on the UPA government, which for 3 years kept trying to reduce subsidies in the oil sector by only raising petrol prices until they were more than double of diesel prices. That began to be corrected by UPA only in their last year and has been further corrected by this government, to their credit. And I think that we must continue down this way. You want to stop, Sunita, you want to stop diesel vehicles? I completely agree with you. All you need to do is to make diesel 20% more expensive than petrol, which is what is right because its energy content is 20% higher. If you do that, everything will automatically happen. This is the blueprint that Mr. Khattar and the Ashok Leyland gentleman was asking for. This is the kind of thing. One more point. May I just make one more point? You see, the part of that blueprint should be, we want to replace diesel, we also want to replace petrol, we want to replace fossil fuels. What are the alternatives? There are a large number of alternatives developing all over the world. I hope we'll come to them later on. And that, we are not aware of the technology. The worst part of our debate is that it is in cloud cuckoo land. We don't even know what's happening in the rest of the world.
I understand. I'm going to come to alternatives. I will come to electric vehicles in just a bit. But I do want to touch upon, while we talk about Make in India, I do want to touch upon jobs. And I'm going to get Hormaz into this debate. And it's Sunita Narayan next. Hormaz, I want to ask you, 30 million people is what this industry employs. When debates like this, or when narratives like this, or when statements like this are made, what happens to investor confidence? I mean, who is going to be responsible if today mass layoffs happen? As it is, we are not creating jobs. Can India afford to put people out of employment at all?
Well, I'll give you one example, and this is not public because companies are scared to speak publicly. But one of the reasons why GM quit India was because of inconsistent policy. When they made their plan of $1 billion in India in 2015, the goalpost suddenly shifted. You had Euro 6 coming in, hybrid out, diesel ban. And I know for a fact that the company said India is not a key market. Of course, it dovetailed with GM's overall strategy to not focus everywhere in the world and be basically in electric mobility, China and a few other key markets. But India was not one of them. And that's a real shame when one of the largest automakers pulls out of India. And I can tell you categorically and definitively, it is this inconsistent policy and the sudden shifting of goalposts which really spooked them. Because as we know, the auto industry is a very long lead business. It takes 18 to 24 months to really plan before you see the effects. So you can't keep changing the policies because the auto industry just doesn't function that way like an on and off switch. So I think we've already had the first casualty, and that is GM. And I would say it is largely due to this sort of flip-flop in policy.
Okay, I get your point. I'm going to take a quick question with Harish Salve and then give a bundled question to Sunita Narayan to answer. Harish Salve, Ironically enough, while you've been in the court fighting for this, there seems to be two voices within the government itself. There seems to be a disconnect. The Environment Ministry is not exactly saying what Mr. Gadkari is. And I appreciate Sunita Narayan's point that at some point in time, I think Mr. Gadkari got frustrated with the industry. I may appreciate that point. But the fact is that the Environment Ministry is telling the court in sworn affidavits something very different from what Mr. Gadkari is saying. So is there a disconnect between two arms to the government, and should that be corrected in the court to begin with? Mr. Salve?
The government, what the government should do is in court is the right thing. The Supreme Court has said that when you bring in a new fuel, cars sold thereafter must apply to the new fuel. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer actually. The very fact that this argument was run that inventory should be allowed to be sold means you allow car manufacturers to pile up inventories and then say the next 2 years you will be selling cars of the old kind. So you might as well push back the introduction by 2 years. And when 40, 50, 60,000 crores are spent by public sector refineries to upgrade to making Euro 6, I think the private refineries in any case are making Euro 6. Reliance is making Euro 6 and exporting. This sort of an argument by car makers should never have been supported by the government, but it is. And now in advance, they are supporting this argument for 2019. So I really welcome what Mr. Gadkari has said, and I hope they, to use the expression we use here in the morning, they wake up and smell the coffee.
Okay, Sunita Narayan, I want you to respond to the point that Horma's made, and I also want you to respond to the question that I raised with Mr. Salve, that it's all very good and, you know, the government is trying to get its house in order, but what about the fact that they're speaking in two languages? One in the court with the Environment Ministry and one on the Surface Transport Ministry. And the other bit that I want to quickly touch upon with you is who is going to be responsible when layoffs and job cuts happen? The fact that GM did not come into India, apart from many other factors, is this policy flip-flop? Did we lose out on those jobs, and who's responsible? This country is not creating employment for its youth. Okay. Our dividend that we call of demography could turn into a demon.
So now that you've asked me, no, fine. So give me time to answer both, because both are very serious questions you've asked. I think first, first the issue about the Environment Ministry versus the Ministry of Transport. I think why I'm particularly very encouraged by Mr. Gadkari's statement of yesterday is that it clarifies our doubts. In fact, we were worried that it was the Transport Ministry and SIAM which was writing the affidavits of the Ministry of Environment, which were really counter to what an environmental ministry should be asking for. So I think what is very clear, and I can get as I see the direction of this government is very clear now, that we are going to move to Euro 6 with no questions asked, and our future direction is that we are going to push towards even cleaner vehicles and vehicles which reduce our import burden and add to energy security. I think it's a very good signal that we have got from the government, and that really takes me to Hormoz's point and your really long tirade about how GM has left and so now we'll lose jobs. I mean, the fact of the matter is we all know why GM left. GM left because of its global strategy, and we also know that Indian policy has not flip-flopped. You've had BS4 coming in 2010. You knew long ago that you will have BS4 coming in nationwide in 2017. The fuel that would come in 2017 was also known. The fact is, automobile industry was hoping that the fuel would not come. And so in the hope that fuel would not come, they built up inventories. But everybody knew, and the BS6 roadmap is clear. Now, we are also very clear, automobile industry is already, it's been dragged to BS6. It's not because of what Mr. Dastari said that, you know, we went there willingly. They were dragged, kicking and shoving to BS6. Already in court, they want us to say that BS6, April 1, 2017, is only the date of registration and not for manufacture. So push the deadline further.
I'm not going to revisit that debate, ma'am. I get your point.
Yesterday was to give you a further roadmap. You don't want to listen to it. You want to cry about GM and job losses.
Understand.
Well, that's fictional. Why should anybody lose their jobs? You just reinvent industry.
I get your point. I get the larger point that you're making here, but on that note, I do want to focus on infrastructure for alternate fuels, for electric vehicles. We're going to discuss that in just a bit. Take a quick breather and be back in a minute. Okay, I'm going to turn focus on the India development debate and talk about infrastructure for alternate fuels. We'll begin with one part, and that's electric vehicles. There's plenty to discuss. I'll go to Mr. Jha on that. But Hormaz, I want to first come to you. Is there infrastructure, electric vehicles? We want to be all electric vehicles by 2030. And what will we do? Will we only rely on NTPC and Power Grid Corporation to create these charging points? I mean, where are the takers? A, consumers per se? And then B, where is the infrastructure? Is there one?
Well, 2030 is a long time away, and the way I look at it, I think for electrification, the final hurdle really will be the infrastructure, because I think the technology is moving in that direction. I'm sure we'll get a breakthrough in battery technology. Electric cars are becoming more and more practical. But finally, it's the infrastructure, and that really, I want to go back to what the experts said about Euro 6. I mean, it just shows a spectacular ignorance that why aren't people bringing their Euro 6 cars to India now? If you brought a Euro 6 car today and drove it on Euro 4 fuel, believe me, the car would conk and you'd be stranded on the road. So similarly, you need the infrastructure for electrification. I think the pace of battery technology, electric motor technology is just accelerating at a huge pace. I think India also, there's a lot of opportunity there. But I think really India is a big country, and as Mr. Khattar said, also a CNG network, that's taken so long to do. Electrification is really going to take a long, long time. I mean, where are people going to park their cars? Where are they going to charge them? These are major issues. So I think, 2030, it's really all well to say. But I just think getting the infrastructure in place by that time, I think that's a pipe dream.
I'll take a quick question to Harish Salve and then go to the car lobby and then go to Sunita Narayan on this. I'm just calling you the pro and the anti of that statement. But Mr. Salve, where is the infra to go electric? I know you've been speaking a lot. You've written pieces on why don't we go electric? Why don't we go for electric vehicles? Where is the infrastructure? Can we clamp down on diesel and petrol by 2030? And the other question, where are the consumers? I mean, where are the buyers for cars like these?
Well, where are the consumers? Okay. Look, we all are compulsorily consumers of air. Cars are optional, okay? And if in order of priority, our children's lungs come above the balance sheet of car manufacturers or even the need for using a car. So let's be very clear, this is not a choice between two cars or two options. The way our environment is deteriorating and the rate of urban decay, these are not choices, these are warnings saying this is the direction in which you're going. If you cannot have electric cars, we may reach a point where fossil fuel cars will in any case have to be shut down or severely constrained. So when the minister is telling them, please get into manufacturing electrical, he's saying, rather than leaving people stranded on the road, make electrical cars. Why don't you understand it in its correct perspective? Do you think God is going to give you an extension if you apply for extension of time? Saying, God, please give me 3 more years of clean air. Please postpone the implementation of your pollution norms. I mean, come on.
Okay, I see two gentlemen in my studio willing to answer that question. I think Prem Shankar Jha has a direct answer to that one. We'll let you go first.
Yes, first and foremost, why are you just fixated on electricity as the method? As someone just asked, a little bit of electricity you can get at non-peak times, but the moment that you get a major shift, you're going to have to produce the same the coal-based power plants that you today are going to destroy the world. So please don't think along those lines. The simplest fuel, which is the easiest to produce, is actually methanol. Methanol is the prescribed racing car fuel today in most international races because it is completely clean. The only exhaust from methanol is carbon dioxide and steam, that means the water vapor. And this has been known for a long time, and methanol has been systematically suppressed by the oil lobby. If we are not prepared to break out of the clutches of the world oil lobby, the world auto lobby, the world electricity lobby. By the way, do you know something about electrical cars? Suddenly everybody's talking about it. 7 large automakers got together. I think it was in that place where they have that World Economic Forum, you know, at Davos, and they decided that they would jointly launch this thing, and they announced it from there. And there is absolutely no question. There are no fueling stations. You have to get those in place. Can you imagine if I'm in a car and I go to Bihar and I try to get an electric charge and they say, "Bhai, power cut ho gaya hai." Is anybody going to buy those electric cars? What are we talking about?
Okay, I think we'll let Mr. Khattar add on, and then I'll quickly move forward to Mr. Dasari.
Sir, V.K. Saraswat in Niti Aayog, who's written a very fine paper on why methanol is the best fuel for cars, not only in India but all over the world.
Fair point.
But nobody's listening to him.
Quickly add on, because I want to move forward.
We are creating India and Bharat again. You have the whole country in which large area where there is no bijli. Now we are talking about lungs of our children in Delhi, but we are not worried about villages where even the poles have not reached. And you have seen what is our consumption even vis-a-vis our neighbors. I think we are talking about all these things. See, first of all, the industry will follow the government norms. There is no compromise. But let us look at our priorities we are talking about. Everyone is worried about Delhi, but no one is worried about Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, where there is no bijli in the villages, there is no education, there is no connectivity of roads, there is nothing at all.
And that's another thread of the debate that we must ponder over. But Sunita Narayan, let me bring this to you. There seems to be a disconnect even in what the government is doing. I mean, look at the GST rates on hybrid cars. For what reason is hybrid car costlier than a normal car? If you are so concerned about environment and if you are so concerned about less pollution, shouldn't hybrid cars be cheaper? Shouldn't hybrid cars at least be priced at the price of petrol or diesel for that matter? I mean, there seems to be a policy disconnect as well, and one minister alone cannot fix things.
Yeah.
Ms. Narayan?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think 2 or 3 things. One, as far as the hybrid cars is concerned, we considered it, we evaluated it. We in fact had written to the government asking for an additional cess on luxury cars, and so I'm happy that was accepted. But we had also decided not to ask for a reduction on the cess on hybrid cars, because we believe that it's important for us to move towards hybrid vehicles, which means buses, two-wheelers are going to be the most critical vehicles when it comes to electrification. And that's why CSE took a very careful view not to ask for reduction in the GST rate for hybrid cars, only for ask for an increase in the SUV rate, which we are happy that the government has agreed to. But let me just answer the first question you asked, which I think is very important, the question about infrastructure. The fact is, infrastructure is about getting it done. Now, I am very technology agnostic. I agree with what Prem has said. Methanol, ethanol, anything which actually reduces pollution, and we need to get the infrastructure in place. But remember that when we did the CNG transition in Delhi, and Mr. Salve is there, he is the one who drove it in the Supreme Court at that stage, the entire transition just took us 2 years. We got the entire pipelines laid, we got the petrol pumps put up, we got the gas supplied, we got 100,000 vehicles converting to CNG. So I think it can be done, and that's where I think the minister has given a wake-up call to say by 2030, that's what our roadmap must look like. He's also promised that he's going to take this matter to the cabinet and come up with a policy which provides the roadmap. So I think instead of banging the minister, which only just tells me this mind frame that industry is in, that we are the victims, you know, we are the ones who are being harassed. And
no.
What the minister is saying, wake up, smell the coffee and move.
Okay, nobody is a victim here on this show. Definitely not the fat cats of Indian Auto, and definitely not the environmentalists. But I'm going to quickly take a question to Vinod Dasari. And Mr. Dasari, in terms of preserving environment, and I will put this to you and I will ask you this tough question. In terms of preserving environment, has the industry fallen short of expectations? I mean, look at the kind of stuff that your global counterparts are doing. You're not doing so much. And which is where, you know, we get these kind of complaints. Has the industry not been proactive? Mr. Dasari.
I completely disagree with your statement. You tell me any nation where the emission norms have been absorbed faster. industry, once again I point out, you want to bring in Euro 6 from tomorrow, please bring it on. The industry will find a way to survive. If there is no fuel, it's no point in talking to the auto industry to say you don't have a certain kind of emissions norm. The amount of investments that the auto industry is doing is incredibly high compared to what it was doing before. Every single emission norm, even BS4 as I pointed out, the auto industry was ready well before the fuel industry was ready. If you cannot provide me the fuel, please don't hold me accountable for not meeting the emissions norm. You set the deadline, I'm willing to meet it. That's our commitment.
Okay, I get that point. You set the deadline, the industry is willing to follow that. You're not going to contest, and I hope we will not see a repeat of BS4. But Hormaz, I'm going to ask you a question that made me a little uncomfortable. I mean, away from that headline and away from those words, I think it's time to move away from all of that. But, you know, the deeper text of the minister's speech, the fact that, you know, that there were references made that why does one need, if there's only one person traveling in a tier 2 town, why does he need to travel in a car? We are looking at aggregators in tier 2 towns. I mean, will the government now decide how many people should be traveling in a car? I'm all for shared mobility. Just for the viewer for panel here, I am absolutely for shared mobility. I think it's a great thing for our roads, will help traffic jams. But what I fail to understand is, why should the government tell me how should I be traveling? I don't want that intrusion.
Well, they can tell you how you should be traveling if they provide adequate and good public transport. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm sitting in your studio right now. I've got a flight to catch. Nothing would be better than for me to step out, get into a metro, which takes me straight to the airport. I can get up into departures and go into the airplane. That would be ideal. But here I'm worried about, will I get traffic? Will I get caught in a snarl? Because I have no choice. And that's the problem. Most people don't have any choice. And let's face it, everyone who's come to your show today has come by car. Some of them even alone. So let's not be hypocritical about it. I think there is no choice, and I think the problem isn't just too much cars, it's just not enough or sufficient public transportation for an alternative. I think the best solution would be Monday to Friday, you take public transport to work, and on the weekends, enjoy your car.
Prem Shankar Jha, you think that's doable? Monday to Friday, take a metro, weekends, carry your car out. But you know, my larger point is, why is the government telling me what should I be doing? And I have an issue with that.
Well, doesn't the government tell you all the time what you should be doing, and we don't have an issue with it? I mean, look, there's got to be some kind of framework within which we live. It tells you you shall not steal. It tells you you shall not drive on the right side of the road. It tells you you can't run through a traffic light. I'm sorry.
We are just starting the debate here.
You asked for a general question which is rhetorical. I don't think it deserves an answer, to be quite honest.
But, you know, let the government create the regulation for sharing and all. Ola and Uber have been asking for so long. They have not come for. You see, government doesn't have to force you. Create a situation where they use it. That's the difference.
And look, governments also have in every country. I mean, I just come from a country where there's odds and evens going on even now, and it worked very well here, because just at the time when I know that my friends in Gurgaon had made their arrangements for traveling, it was cut off, and all the benefits of that 1 month were lost because it was an Aam Aadmi Party government had done it, and it was popular. It was insufferable to the present government that there's something popular should have been done by them.
Ms. Sunita Narayan, let me ask you this question. Should choices be driven by market forces? Should choices be driven by industry, or should choices be driven by the government at all? Should government thrust choices upon people? I'm going to say this with a caveat. I think shared mobility is a great thing, but I'm going to absorb or adopt or embrace it because there's a market out there, because there are players out there, because there's an industry that I have choices to pick up from, not because the government wants me to.
I think you're asking the wrong person. I think I'm clearly in favor of what Mr. Gadkari said, and you're taking it completely out of context. You know, this is what I'm finding about this entire debate. You're picking and choosing and taking it out of context because the industry is so for once they have been shown the mirror and they don't like what they're seeing in the mirror, and that's what you are reflecting in your program. Now, let's be clear. I say there should be no junk food, and government should actually regulate junk food so that celebrities do not endorse it. Is that government saying that junk food should not be eaten? Isn't that wrong? Isn't that something which is a health hazard? So if Mr. Gadkari says that he wants to really promote shared mobility, and he is going to put in policies, frameworks, incentives, so that we can actually make sure that we move people, as I keep saying, and not cars. What is wrong with it? Take the larger message, move on with it. You don't like the mirror which has been shown to you yesterday by the minister, but for once accept that's your true face. Take it, move it, because we can do something much better tomorrow.
Hormaz, I'm going to give you 20 seconds to answer that. This is your true face being shown in the mirror. Take it or leave it.
Well, I think that what we need to look at is not being shown in the mirror, but what the absolute hard facts are. Today, if you talk to me about automobile safety, I think the car industry has a lot to answer for. So let's talk about the ills there are of the auto industry. I would say there's safety, there's congestion, and there's pollution. Safety, definitely we are behind the curve. Our cars, some of them just fold up like tinfoil in an accident, and I think really we're really behind the curve on that, and the government really needs to wake up on that. But pollution and congestion, I think we lead actually. Tell me which other market, we are the small car capital of the world today. We make the most number of small cars. You go to China or Beijing and just see how big their cars are. What more can be done? And it's not the industry. Believe me, it's the consumer who's asking for this. No brownie points for the industry over here. The consumer wants small, fuel-efficient cars. Fuel-efficient cars means that if little fuel goes in, little pollution comes out. And I think given the fact that we probably must be the cleanest BS4 market in the world today. And when we move to BS6, we'll be even cleaner.
All right. On that note, I think I'm completely out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate. Just as a parting note, I think industry and environment will have to coexist. We have to find a way to make our roads less congested, but we've got to give people the choice. We've got to make pollution our enemy number one, but we cannot force choices upon people. And on that note, I also want to point out that if it requires an extra lane at the national highways, so be it, because India deserves that and India wants that. And to rise with India, we need that one lane across the national highways, even if that means that India will have to spare thought and money for it. On that note, thanks very, very much for being with us on this edition of the India Development Debate. It's a pleasure joining you.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.